Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 185 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us. Jumping straight back into it from the O2 Arena in London, England on DAZN. A heavyweight matchup, a rematch. This is a rematch, I believe. I don't think I mentioned that last week. I forgot. I don't know why I thought that this was their first meeting, but it wasn't. I should have known that. Derek Chisora gets the split decision win over Chisora-Pulev for the vacant WBA International Heavyweight title. I didn't watch it live, but I caught it back after, and it was kind of what I expected. And I think last week when I had our special guest co-host Curran Bhatti of Ask the Experts podcast, I believe I chose Chisora to take the win. Curran, I think he went with Pulev, but I think I just went with Chisora because of his experience, with being in the ring with all these significant heavyweights over the last several years, and also just the guy's just like a tank. I always think about the Usyk fight. He was one of Usyk's first heavyweight matchups, and he just looked like a tank compared to Usyk and coming forward and just swinging away. But there were some people, from what I saw online, that thought Pulev should have taken it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've only watched it live. I haven't watched it back, but watching it live, I had Chisora. I thought Chisora just did enough. I thought he came out with a good game plan of constantly just going to the body, then fighting on the inside. He would constantly, punch Pulev in the torso when they were, clinched up. And I thought it was a good tactic, and I thought, some of the big shots that he landed as well kind of rattled Pulev, and you can see Pulev's still got a chin, given that, because he got caught with a couple of real flush shots. Pulev people were saying I think he did work his jab better. But even then, I thought, if we're looking at it in terms of a street fighter type thing where they both got energy bars, I thought, Chisora probably took off more of, Pulev's energy bar with some of the big, huge shots that he was landing and shots to the torso. I thought it was an okay fight. It wasn't going to be, anything crazy in terms of technique or anything. They're both older. Chisora always kind of drags people down to his level where he just brawls. And I thought Pulev did kind of fall for that at times. But it was a fun fight to watch. I enjoyed watching it, and really that's all, us as fans want, right? Just good matchups where it ends up being a really, really fun fight. And I thought that fight was, decently good to watch, and be interesting to see where they go with Chisora next. They keep talking about Wilder, but is he going to just be a lamb to the slaughter?
Do you think that's realistic though? I just don't see it, especially with Chisora fighting on DAZN and Wilder. If anything, Wilder's going to come back and fight the winner of maybe Ruiz and Ortiz, or maybe Adam Kaunaski, or it's going to be a PBC heavyweight, maybe Chris Arreola in a rematch. Wilder hasn't fought since the Fury fight. But the promotional politics are way too strong at this point. I mean, it's nice to throw his name out there, but I mean, Chisora's been in the ring with all these guys. He's had a great career, and he obviously still gets a lot of attention headlining these cards. But is it proper to say that, the winner of this fight, which is Chisora, should get a shot at one of the top heavyweights? Even though Wilder's coming off multiple losses against Fury, he's still one of the top heavyweights in the world. Does Chisora deserve a shot at this top echelon again, even though he's been in with the top echelon already?
I think if you look at it in terms of resume and what he's done over recent years, no. But it's a business. And are there any other heavyweights that kind of sell like he does? He just has a legion of followers in the UK, I think, because he's one of those guys that will fight anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere. He's a heavyweight Nate Diaz. He's got that type of record, was it 12 losses now. Most people would be, still knocking around the small hall shows, with that type of record. But because he does it and the way that he talks and stuff like that, he has this loyal fan base, I guess, because win, lose or draw, over the last few years, he puts on the show. He puts on a show.
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's people tune in to watch him. That's why he keeps being utilized. And I think last week when I was talking to Curran about it, I compared him in a way to Gabe Rosado, where Gabe Rosado's been in with a lot of killers over his career, a lot of the biggest names in the sport from 154 to 168, especially. But it's also because Gabe Rosado is great for TV. He's been great for TV, and he's a good opponent to have across the ring from someone. And Chisora's in that, been in a similar boat. He's been a little bit more, probably, at least in the UK, a little bit more, probably, I don't want to say scrutinized, not the word I'm looking for, but he's been a little bit more under the microscope over there because he's a heavyweight. So there's a little bit more attention on him. I mean, think about it like this. If Chisora and Pulev were featherweights, would they have headlined this card last weekend in the UK? Or is it because, they're heavyweights, they're big guys? A lot of casual fans like, oh, God, these are the heavyweights. Let's watch them. Maybe people were like, oh, DAZN, I have DAZN, or I'll get it for this fight or something. I'll watch it. Or even if they stream it, they're still watching it. If they were lower weight classes, would they have headlined a card over there in the UK on DAZN?
Hard to say, isn't it? Because like we touched on, it's kind of like Chisora's following him. Is that just because he's a heavyweight as well? Because people love the heavyweights, the larger than life characters, the larger than life people. They walk around substantially taller than everyday folk. Ricky Hatton did it at a lighter weight, but he's a 1 in a million. We haven't really seen one in the UK like him since. And we know
that's true. How we really haven't, huh? I mean,
not the sort of fans he brought, no.
But it also helped. It also helped that. Do you think he really crossed over? Because obviously in the UK, his UK fans were his bread and butter, but he really became, I guess, do we want to call him global? At least it's maybe closer to global when he came to fight Mayweather and Pacquiao.
Yeah, he fought a lot. He fought a lot for in the US. He came over and fought. Was it the early HBO shows or something he had a contract with?
Right.
Me and Andy Clark were talking about this a few weeks back when you were off. We were kind of talking about his legion of fans, and he was a man of the people. It was his downfall in terms of weight cutting and stuff like that, but it was also so good for him because he got all those fans, and he probably got huge paydays because of the amount of people he put on the seats. But that was because of the drinking and how accessible he was in the local bars, which was kind of bad for his career. So it kind of like maybe evened each other out, I guess. But he's still within there. Unbelievable career. How many people have fought Pacquiao and Mayweather?
No, right. The Pacquiao Mayweather fights definitely helped him cross over to a new echelon, a new level. But going back to Chisora's win and Chisora as a whole, him being so, I guess, having the popularity that he does in the UK, I've always wondered why he hasn't come to the US in a fight. But I mean, if you look at the American heavyweight landscape, a lot of the American heavyweights and I say, American and or a lot of the American-based heavyweights are signed under PBC. So I think, because I was thinking about it, I was like, how come, if he's so popular over there, like, okay, why not give it a shot over here? I know that he gave a shot to AJ to come to New York, and he obviously sold well, but he lost, and he hasn't been back since, because I think, Eddie Hearn's been like, oh, they didn't go how we planned. Like, I still think if you bring somebody like, especially like AJ to the United States, he'll sell. People will show up for him. But ever since that New York loss to Ruiz, the first fight, they've been like, let's just stick to the UK. Let's stick to the safe bet. And I kind of started thinking about that same pathway with Chisora. I was like, okay, well, he's proven, and he's still proving that he's a draw over there, headlining these shows. Why not bring him to the U.S.? But then I started thinking about it in more detail, and I thought, oh, okay, well, PBC has all the American heavyweights, and I don't know if Eddie Hearn or DAZN, for that matter, are comfortable putting two English heavyweights or two foreign heavyweights in a way that aren't American on a U.S. card, like as a headliner, and with Chisora's personality, he'd want a headline or he'd make a big fuss about it. So yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see. I mean, has Chisora ever fought in the United States? Maybe early in his career? He hasn't, huh? It's always been in the UK, right?
Britain, and then he did a one fight with Monaco when Matchroom used to put those kind of like dinner shows on in Monaco.
Yeah, I remember
fought
that.
there and had a terrible performance.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, they bear the UK fan base over there obviously should I guess you want to say cherish him over there, because we're never going to see him in person over here. We're not. We're not.
2 or 3 more fights, depending on who he picks, and he'll be gone.
Yeah, we're not. So I mean, unless Wilder and PBC say, and Showtime or Fox for that matter, depending on who broadcasts it, say, okay, Chisora, you can fight Wilder. Wilder wants to fight you, but you have to come to our side. And Eddie Hearn, DAZN, they can't be involved. And honestly, I think if that's the only way it happens, and if it does, I think Eddie Hearn lets him cross the street for that. Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a long time servant. The chance to fight in the US may be something that's on his bucket list. And, he's not one of the major stars that I'm sure people like DAZN don't want to see go anywhere else. He does well in the UK, but, he's over the hill. He's close to retirement. I'm sure they'll pick him like 2 or 3 fights where he stands a decentish chance of winning, and then he'll be gone.
Yeah. But I did like the matchup. I thought they were both at very similar spots in their careers to match them up. So I was a fan of the matchup. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they do a obviously if you can't get like a Wilder fight, one of these bigger paydays, which doesn't seem likely. I can see them running this back maybe by the end of the year. A Pulev and Chisora rematch. I mean, why not? Why not? They need to fill up the DAZN dates and all that. But also on the card, Israel Madrimov remains undefeated. He didn't take a loss, at least. It was fought to a no contest because I think it was a head clash. There was a cut because of a head clash. Him and Michael Soro. Soro was actually cut by the unintentional head clash, which forced the referee and the ringside doctor to stop the fight. So it was very, what do you call it? Anticlimactic. Is that what you call it? I'm assuming they're going to run this. I mean, there's no way they're not going to run this back, right? Or what do you think?
I'm sure Madrimov won't want to. I'm sure
he won't want to, but
will want to. I think it's up to the WBA. I think that's what Eddie Hearn was saying. They'll see what the WBA is saying. They may. But it looks like one of those fights that maybe he's just cursed. Obviously, after what happened the first time where the bell went and no one heard it, and then Madrimov finished him off after the bell. And then Madrimov, I thought, started really well. I thought he was working a lot better than last time. And it looked like he was on his way to victory, in my opinion. But we never got to see it through. So we'll see. Maybe it's just one of those fights that's not meant to be with all the stuff that's happening.
Right. It's not like we've never seen it in boxing before. Also, this past weekend from the White Sands Event Center in the state of Florida in the United States on ProBox TV, Cesar Francis gets the unanimous decision win over 10 rounds over Ray Beltran. I haven't seen him in a while. This is for the vacant WBO and NABO super lightweight titles. And also Curtis Harper gets the majority decision win over Christian Thun, Thun. I've never seen that last name before. I'm sure it's common. But Christian Thun takes the first professional loss of his career. And also this past weekend, probably at least in the United States, the card of the weekend from the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio's getting a lot of cards. So shout out to Texas and especially San Antonio. You guys are starting to get a lot of the fights over there. So, maybe it's starting to become a bigger and bigger boxing hub. So we will see. Ray Vargas also remains undefeated at 36-0 as he gets the split decision over Vargas-Magsayo, who suffers the first loss of his career. Ray Vargas is now the WBC featherweight champion of the world. And Vargas was actually down in round number 9, but pulled off the split decision. What'd you think about this matchup?
It's funny going in because a lot of people had Magsayo was kind of maybe going to mop on Vargas because he'd been out for a while due to injury.
But Vargas is just so big. He's
so big, and obviously like he's moved up in weight for this one. He's now like 2-weight world champion, but he's so boring and goddamn effective that that before I was thinking like, I bet Vargas takes this. But Magsayo much better to watch, knockout power. But Ray Vargas is just so goddamn methodical and boring that it works. It works terrible.
Well, that's what it is. He's methodical about it. So it's a winning strategy, but to the casual fan, or not even casual fan, but to any person watching the television trying to be entertained in a way, it's hard for people to appreciate it unless you really like the technical side of boxing. I mean, that's just what it is.
I mean, the first 2 rounds I probably gave to Magsayo. Thought he started really well. Vargas kind of came into his groove, just kind of watching him, seeing what he did, and then obviously kind of trying to come out with some type of plan to how to negate him. And then after that, I think Vargas probably won 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then obviously lost the 9th when he got dropped. And then Magsayo came back, and I thought Vargas just closed it out at the end. And are they going to run it back? Just to see, was it a bad night from Magsayo, or as we say, just Vargas just knows what to do. He's so tall for the weight. Uses his attributes really well.
He's huge. He's huge. I mean, like, let's think about it. Let's think about his size just by looking at him from what we know, seen him. Looking at his size, what weight would he naturally belong in?
You'd have to say at least. I mean, we were stood next to him, weren't we?
We stood next to him.
He was, I would say, you'd say he'd be a tall and skinny 140.
You think it's 140? I honestly think it's 147.
Yeah, even 147. He's super skinny, dude. At that age, I don't know how he manages to make it. All round, week after week, day after day, he must be dieting to stay down at that weight.
Well, I mean, has there been any reports and even during weight cuts or weigh-ins and stuff like that about him having trouble with the weight? There hasn't, right? I mean, if there has, we haven't heard about it. We haven't heard about it from anybody in like internal sources or media reports or anything. So, I mean, I would take that as that. Well, he knows his body and he makes the weight in a semi-easy fashion.
Yeah, professional, doesn't balloon afterwards. Just very straightforward and methodical, and just knows he must box. His life must be like how he boxes.
Exactly. I mean, he seems like he's a disciplined guy even when he's not fighting. I'm sure he eats and has fun, but like I don't think I've ever seen too many pictures or videos of him outside the ring and in between fights. But I think the ones that I've seen, he doesn't really balloon up. He's not like a Ricky Hatton, somebody we just talked about, in between fights kind of balloons up and stuff like that. But there's not, that's a hard lifestyle to live. You kind of have to be disciplined. Floyd Mayweather, has said it in multiple interviews. He's like, you have to be disciplined even between your fights. And he says he's like, the highest I go in between my fights or in between the fights that I had, I think he said was like 160. So, and he fights at 147. So he didn't have to work that hard to lose the weight come fight night. So I think Vargas, I'm from my assumption, just based on what I know, I think he either has a really great metabolism or he kind of stays in shape and he just kind of has a good diet or something. But he's obviously moved up to 126. So he's made his career and his weight cut a little bit easier with those 4 extra pounds, which I'm sure helps, which is crazy because from 122 to 126 at his height and his size, it's like that's still really small in terms of the weight because he's a big guy. But, it is what it is. Was he the mandatory? Was Vargas the mandatory here, or was this just a matchup that was made because Vargas moved up to 122 and he was WBC champ at 122? So you move up to the next weight and you get a title shot for that sanctioning body.
Yeah, well, that was the WBO rule, wasn't it? And like other sanctioning bodies now have just taken it in, like, okay, we've got a popular champ at this weight, like let's just move him up. I think it was just a little backhander from the WBC.
Yeah, no, yeah, I could definitely see that. Did we hear anything about a rematch clause, Magsayo? Because Magsayo's under, I think, Manny Pacquiao's team, and he's with Sean Gibbons and stuff like that. I would think maybe if Vargas wasn't a mandatory, even if he is a mandatory, you could still pull in rematch clauses. But
PBC have all of them, don't they? Brandon Figueroa, Magsayo, Gary Russell Jr.
At a split decision, especially with Magsayo knocking him down in the 9th round, should we guess and say there is a rematch clause here?
I haven't heard in the interviews afterwards whether there is. I would say he deserves one, but money talks. If there's the amount of things we've seen on Twitter afterwards about they're saying like Vargas against Leo Santa Cruz and stuff like that. We know how much PBC love Leo Santa Cruz. Maybe they're going to give him another big fat payday. Santa Cruz has been stale for quite some time over the last few years.
Yeah, I think Santa Cruz just doesn't, he doesn't care anymore. I think from 2015 to like 2018 is when, and even before that was when Santa Cruz was really like on the high level. He fought Mares multiple times. He had several fights in between and stuff like that. But I think Santa Cruz has made a ton of money, and obviously Al Heyman, PBC, are big fans of his. We've been told by somebody on the inside who knew the ins and outs of how the PBC works that Leo Santa Cruz is one of the only people in boxing, especially, who has a direct phone number to Al Heyman. And because and we were told that a lot of people don't. They have to call like his office and they relay a message to him. But Leo Santa Cruz has the direct phone number to Al Heyman. So, that just shows you like he's been taken care of. I mean, he's an exciting fighter, so it's not that he hasn't deserved it, but think about it like in terms of pay. They talk about MMA fighters and stuff like that getting paid in comparison to boxers. How many people in the world besides hardcore boxing fans know who Leo Santa Cruz is? And Leo Santa Cruz makes millions of dollars per fight. In his last several fights, he makes millions of dollars. But how many people outside of boxing, and I'm talking about the hardcore fans, know who Leo Santa Cruz is in comparison with somebody, who's Israel Adesanya or something in the UFC or something like that? Somebody way more popular on a global scale in terms of pay like that. I don't want to go down the pay route because I know we talked about it before, but it's just crazy. It's crazy to think about. And like I said, I think Leo Santa Cruz, I think he's kind of over boxing. He's made a ton of money. I'm sure he got paid pretty well for the Tank Davis fight. And he's kind of put in his work. What is he? Is he like a 2-weight, 3-weight world champion or something like that? Santa Cruz?
It's at least 3, right?
Something like that. So, I think he's just one of those guys. He's multiple time world champion. He's content. I'm sure he'll come back, but he's in no rush. And he's like, he's kind of like on cruise control. Like, boxing. He's going to box. How did Miguel Cotto say it when he was fighting? Was it Sergio Martinez? Sergio Martinez said that he was prepared to die in the ring or something like that. And Cotto called him stupid. And Cotto was like, why would you prepare to die in this ring? He's like, it's just a job. He's like, this is my job. I remember that. That sticks with me. Cotto was like, I look at this as a job. He was like, I have a family. Why do I want to die in that ring? And I think, that there's different boxers look at it differently from different perspectives. And I think Leo Santa Cruz, especially now, the last couple years, I think he looks at it the same way. He's like, it's a job. He just goes in there and does his thing. He keeps to himself when he's not fighting. You don't really hear too much about him, lives a private lifestyle. You can't hate on that, You can't hate on that. You really can't, because he had, exciting fights. Abner Mars was fun, was exciting. They fought twice, I think, at Staples Center and all that. So, but in terms of the other featherweights, who else does PBC have?
Brandon Figueroa, Gary Russell, Navarrete, Lara.
Honestly, I could see Gary Russell stepping up, be like, "Oh, I'll take on Vargas. I'll go for it." I could see it. I mean, they're just gonna have to worry about the length, but Figueroa too. I think he's down. And then obviously you got other featherweights and other promotional companies, but I think it's always safe to say like, oh, let's just name the ones within their stable, their promotional company, because 99% chance that they're not going to fight anybody outside of the bubble of their promotional company. So, but it is what it is. But honestly, I can see a rematch coming. I feel like with Pacquiao being in Magsayo's corner, not in his corner that day, but being his promoter or being, his management company, I feel like Pacquiao has a pull and his team like, hey, well, we want a rematch clause, especially being a split decision. Why not? It's not like PBC has, 8, 9, 10 featherweights that they can kind of rotate, but we will see. And also on the card, a name you just mentioned, Brandon Figueroa gets the 6th-round stoppage over Carlos Castro. Castro was down in round 3. This was a good win for Brandon Figueroa and a good stoppage. I think it really gave him some momentum. What do you think?
MG, really, I thought it was a good win for him. He was active over the last couple of years, kind of slowed down a little bit. Good to watch. I think he'll always get good fights, throws a lot of punches, not exactly heavy-handed, but just, combinations of punches are kind of the reasons why, he generally tends to stop people. But he's definitely, one for TV.
Yeah. I think that's like we just talked about Chisora, Gabe Rosado. Figueroa is a TV fighter. And it's good. I think it's good to if you can't win a world championship and you try to get to that cusp and you have these multiple shots and you just can't win the big one. At least if you can be a TV friendly fighter, you're going to keep getting paydays. You're going to keep getting put on cards. Which isn't bad for exposure, isn't bad for your life in terms of career, and pay. So, I mean, would you rather have? Let me put this hypothetical to you, Mike. Would you rather have a career of like, let's just say 5 years where you win 2 world titles, at a weight class like 130 or 40 or whatever, and you have some decent fights, make some decent money, and then you lose a title and then it's over and you kind of retire, or you just kind of like, oh, maybe it's over. And so you stop boxing. Or would you rather have a career of 10 years where you don't win a world title, but you're a TV friendly fighter and you get put on all these cards and you have consistent paydays, not crazy paydays, but consistent paydays for about 10 or so years?
See, that's a hard question, isn't it? There's so many. Like, I suppose, are you going to be more popular as just a TV fighter? Like, are you a boring world champion when no one really wants to watch you? Just having that gratitude of you walking down the street where everyone's like, oh, hey, there's that guy. I've seen you on TV. You're a great fighter, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that's cool. But when you don't have a world title, you're never embedded into those books. There's only a handful of world champions. So that's a really hard question to answer.
It is, huh? It's a hard question. I'm gonna ask fighters. I don't think on the record they would say like, oh no, I'd rather be a TV fighter for 10 years. Obviously, you don't want to say that. You go into a sport to be a champion, a world champion. But I'm gonna be like, oh, it's off the record. We won't record this, and then when we come back, we'll just say, oh, they sold us that. No, I'm just kidding. But I would really want to know the answer to that, because that's a true scenario, right? That's a true scenario that we've seen, over the history of boxing. So we will see. But Brandon Figueroa, like I said, gets a 6-round TKO over Carlos Castro. Figueroa, like you said, could be an opponent for Ray Vargas. You know, 2 featherweights, co-main event, main event. Maybe that's what they're building next. If there's no rematch clause, I'm sure PBC is likely going to make Figueroa versus Vargas. And this fight would probably be in LA. Would you think?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe Carson?
Yeah, Carson would be a good one. I mean, maybe San Antonio again. They keep.
It could go back to Texas, San Antonio. Shout out to San Antonio. Any of our San Antonio listeners, you guys are getting a ton of fights. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying them. Also on the card, making his debut, I believe, for the Premier Boxing's champion stable, Rashidi Ellis, 24-0, gets the first round TKO over Jose Marrufo, who is 13-10-2. Rashidi Ellis, obviously, you know his name. He used to be with Golden Boy Promotions. His last fight, he beat Alexis Rocha of Santa Ana, California, and gave him his first and only loss so far in his career. And then I'm not sure what happened behind the scenes between Rashidi Ellis and Golden Boy, but obviously that relationship was strained. Ellis got out of his contract, and PBC picked him up. So I don't know what happened there, but PBC scored with the talent right there, because Ellis is obviously a good fighter, and he's undefeated, and he's going to be one. I feel like he's one of those guys that are under the radar, and people aren't paying attention to him, and he's going to slowly creep up in the rankings. And we're like, oh crap, Ellis he's due for a title shot, or he's going to get a shot. He's going to be that guy. I'm telling you. And like I said, we're speculating here. We don't know what happened between him and Golden Boy. Maybe they just weren't scheduling him for a fight, and they were just, he was upset. Who knows? We don't know. But it sucks for Golden Boy for not being able to keep that relationship alive, because Ellis he's an excellent talent. He's an excellent talent. And PBC is lucky to pick him up. So I like Ellis, man. I like Ellis, and obviously they put him against somebody with almost double-digit losses at that point before the fight was over, to kind of get him used to get a win under his belt under the PBC banner. And now they're going to move him, into the bigger names. I mean, who else? Who's next for him? What do you think?
Anybody, dude, really. He's that good. People around the gyms have been talking about him for so long. He's made a good sparring partner for a long time with Canelo. I think the fact that Golden Boy couldn't get him fights was because everyone in the know knows how good he is. And people are just like, I'm not fighting him unless I have to. And I think
do you think that's it? I mean, obviously, like, from our knowledge and from what we know, we would think that's what's going on. But do you think that's it?
Yeah, because he's that good. He's that fast. You see, speed was unbelievable for Lex. I think Lex was just kind of like, what the fuck is going on here? And then he's that good, and he travels around the gyms, spars everybody. And now he's with the perfect promotion, because now that they have him, they can match him.
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. Like, his name, he's been sparring around a lot of gyms with a lot of different bigger names, and people kind of know who he is. And especially after his Alexis Rocha fight, sometimes your promoter tries. Sometimes your promoter tries to make you fight. And I would think Golden Boy tried to make fights for him, and maybe they were just getting a lot of rejections. And, and maybe Ellis was like, the fights that he could get, they were guys with like losing records or something who just wanted fights. And he's like, I don't want that fight. I have momentum here. Maybe that was it. I hope that was it, and maybe De La Hoya and Golden Boy, the Golden Boy team over there, maybe they recognize, like, you know what? It's hard for us. Like, let's look out for his interest, and let's just part ways, let him go to somebody else to try to get his opportunities. Because, I mean, like, you also, as a promoter, sometimes you got to look at that. You really do. You got to look at that in terms of, going to Eddie Hearn, most recent example with Devin Haney. Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, DAZN, obviously they wanted to be involved in the undisputed matchup, but they recognized, like, okay, we don't have the power here Top Rank, George Kambosos, Lou DiBella, they have all the belts over there. They have all the negotiation power in a sense. So Eddie Hearn was like, you know what? This is what the kid's been working for. I got to let him go and let him go do his thing. And hopefully he, fulfills his obligations over there and has the titles and comes back to the zone and Matchroom. That's what they're hoping for. Who knows? Maybe that's what happened with Golden Boy. They recognize, like, you know what? We got to just let him go to be able to look out for his best interest and let him sign with somebody else. Obviously you want to hope that's the case, because I don't think we ever got like an official report, did we, about what happened?
No, I think it's just, like you said, stagnant for so long that it was just time to go.
Yeah, people were just speculating. Obviously, there was a lot of, promotional fan bases on Twitter and online saying, fans of PBC, fans of Golden Boy, fans of Top Rank, speculating and talking shit, kind of try to add fuel to the fire. But we don't honestly know. We haven't had any credible reporting. And when I say credible reporting, it's hard to really say that with conviction in the sport of boxing, especially in the last few years or so. Moving on, this upcoming weekend fight previews this Wednesday this week, July 13th, from the Ota City General Gym in Tokyo, Japan. Kazuto Ioka, 28-2, goes up against Donnie Nietes. This is for the WBO Super Flyweight title. Obviously, these opponents are potential opponents for Bam Rodriguez, Roman Gonzalez, Chocolatito Estrada, not Chocolatito Estrada, I'm sorry, I confused them. Juan Francisco Estrada, Carlos Cuadras, those guys. Even Sorungvisa, even though he's coming off a loss. But what do you think about this fight and who wins?
Good fight. Obviously Nietes has been around for so long. This is what, his 50th fight or something like that. I think Kyoto will be too young and too strong, unfortunately. But it's just good to see, Nietes is still around. We've still got all of those names and enjoy them while we can. You just went through a whole host of, names: Estrada, Chocolatito. The new guys are coming through: Franco, Bam Rodriguez. Yeah, these lighter divisions are lighting it up at the minute, and it's good to see. It's good to see people are enjoying them.
Absolutely. And also this upcoming Friday, the 15th of July, for the Pechanga Resort and Casino in Temecula, California, on ESPN. Excuse me. Temecula is not too far from San Diego. It's like the midway between San Diego and about Ontario, California, where the Toyota Arena is, in the Ontario, California airport. I would say maybe it's like a midpoint in some ways. And the Pechanga Resort and Casino is also, I believe, tribal land. I believe so. I don't think they have to oblige by the California Commission rules, even though sometimes I think they use them, but I'm not sure. But Arnold Barboza Jr., a Southern California native out of West Covina, California, 26-0, goes up against Danielito Zorrilla, 16-0, an undefeated fighter. We've talked about Barboza Jr. a lot the last couple years or so. He's closer to 30 fights now. Are we going to see him? Assuming he's the favorite here, are we going to see him get a big name after this fight, assuming he gets the victory this upcoming Friday? And before you give your answer, Mike will be there in Pechanga Resort and Casino for this card for Top Rank on ESPN. So he will be there trying to get some content for us and obviously covering the fight as press. So if you see him, give him a shout out. He might have some shirts for you guys. But what do you think, Mike? What do you think about this fight?
Fight, actually. Good matchup for Barboza. You'd think he would sit around and kind of wait, since he's so highly ranked in the WBO. He was looked at, to fight for Jack Catterall and then, get a world title shot after that. So fair play to him, not just sitting around and waiting for that. Zorrilla is tricky-ish opponent, heavy-handed. Last fight was a 2-round knockout over Pablo Cesar Cano. So that's a decentish name on his record right there. But I think Barboza would just have enough. I think he's well schooled. quietly gone about his work with some, hard opponents, and really deserves to be, where he is.
Right. I mean, I really want to see him in there with a big name. And you know what? Maybe they've just recently announced officially that Teofimo Lopez returns next month in August. Arnold Barboza fights this month in July. So are they keeping them on a similar timeline here? And maybe they meet towards the end of the year?
Yeah, you got Pedraza as well.
You got Pedraza as well. But I mean, Teofimo Lopez, Arnold Barboza Jr. fight at 140 pounds on ESPN prime time, I think is something that Top Rank and ESPN are looking at, right?
I could see it being made. You'd feel for Barboza though, wouldn't you? If he gets put in there with someone like Teofimo Lopez after the run he's gone on, goes 27, 28 fights undefeated, and then they just feed him to Teofimo Lopez, and within that period of time he's not had one title shot, you would feel kind of hard done to.
No, yeah. If you put it like that, that's true. I didn't think about it like that. But don't you think that Arnold Barboza Jr. would, if he can't get a title shot, I feel like he would. Okay, I'll fight Lopez. I mean, Lopez has a big profile. He's also trying to make his name known at 140 pounds after losing his titles to George Kambosos at 135. And I mean, think about it. If Barboza fights somebody like a Josh Taylor or, whoever who has the titles, Josh Taylor, I guess. Obviously, that's a big win. He has the titles. But if he fights somebody like Teofimo Lopez in a non-title fight and he beats him, what's a bigger rub in terms of the momentum at 140 pounds?
I don't know. It's hard. Taylor, just because of the fact he was undisputed and then had to give him up just because of the mandatories. And then I think, he's kind of crossed over due to his fight with, Jose Ramirez. Teofimo Lopez is definitely probably the biggest star this side of the pond. But then I kind of think his kind of fame is kind of waned a bit with his, the way that he took that loss to Kambosos. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Barboza's in a good position. He could sit and wait and kind of enforce that mandatory, but fair play for him to just fighting on, and he's not taking any gimmies.
That's true. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Barboza, so hopefully he, assuming he gets the win this Saturday. But Zorrilla is undefeated as well, and sometimes those lesser known guys, especially at undefeated records, sometimes they're pretty dangerous, and you just don't know. So we will see. Also, this upcoming Saturday, the 16th of July, from the Crypto.com Arena, formerly the Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles on DAZN, Mike's favorite fighter and person in the world. That's right, King Ryan Garcia returns as he goes up against Javier-Fortuna. Fortuna, this fight was actually supposed to happen, I believe, last year or earlier this year. But that's when Ryan Garcia, I believe it was last year, so Ryan Garcia had some mental health issues, so he took a break from boxing and he pulled out of the fight. And then Jojo Diaz stepped in to fight Fortuna at 135 pounds and beat him. And now Ryan Garcia is fighting the guy that Jojo Diaz beat. But I get it, you got to kind of keep him on a pathway. He's a star, and we will see. I think he would have to knock this guy out. Obviously, Ryan Garcia has a fast knockout power, and he's going to try to knock out Fortuna. But I still think Fortuna, even though I think Garcia is the favorite here, I still think Fortuna's a pretty, he's a bigger threat than we think, even coming off a loss. What do you think?
If he takes it to him, Fortuna is game, and I thought he could have pressed Jojo Diaz a little bit more when they fought. It's just, it's hard to say, because Ryan's technically very poor in the way that he fights, but he's so quick and strong that people stand off because they see how quick he is and how powerful he is. And
I think that's what helps him, though. That's what helps him keep these fighters away from him in a way and gets these wins is his speed and his quick power.
Yep.
It's because his fundamentals and his footwork aren't that great. I mean, you can see it.
He's a lightweight Wilder.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. He's like a Wilder.
Yeah.
You know, Wilder's boxing ability isn't the best, but he has that ridiculous ending power. Ridiculous ending power. And I think Garcia in some way, shape, or form is kind of the same. I think that's a good example. Yeah, you're right.
Lightweight Deontay Wilder, he's like, you get in with this reach, you're getting sparked. So people stand off and then they just kind of get confused and they don't know what to do and they start going down in rounds and stuff like that.
Right.
And then, you know, eventually they come inside, they take that risk and they get caught. So that's why you need somebody like a Tyson Fury. Like you have to walk him down because, you know, Ryan going backwards he has no back foot game, you know.
Right.
So you need somebody to pressurize him, like a Tyson Fury did. Somebody.
I mean, if Luke Campbell was able to knock him down, and that punch wasn't even, it didn't look like it was that hard. It wasn't thrown with a lot of force. It was an overhand, literally like a hammer. It was like an overhand, right, and it just caught him right on the button. I mean, if somebody with bigger power and more technique catches him like that, is he not going to get up? What do you think?
100% he's not getting up. He's got knocked out in the amateurs, knocked out in local gyms. He always denies it, but God's honest truth. You ask anyone in Southern California that goes around the gyms and they know that.
I'm telling you,
he hasn't got the greatest
right.
chin.
I'm telling you, this kid though, if he can, I know he gets a lot of crap and for his technique and his abilities, and now that he's left Canelo and, you know, all this stuff, especially when he left boxing, but then he was still talking crap and posting stuff after other lightweight fights and stuff like that. You know, he kind of invites the criticism on his own, but I'm telling you, man, if this kid can keep winning, obviously, especially in knockout form and, you know, go all viral and stuff with his social media followers and everybody else and stuff. I mean, he gets picked up by like TMZ and mainstream media. He gets picked up by them. But if he can get these bigger fights with these bigger names and beat them, I'm telling you, this kid, I believe it. He could be the biggest star in boxing. Like, I'm talking about generating money with the names that are between 135 and 140 right now. If this kid could fight these names, and I'm talking about like Tank Davis, you know, even Teofimo Lopez at 140. And I think this fight is at 140, I think, with Fortuna, or 139 or something. I don't think it's at 135. I think it's at a catch weight that's closer to 140 than it is to 135. But if Ryan can fight these guys at 135, at Kambosos, at Haney, and all that stuff, and actually win, especially if he can knock him out with his highlight power and speed, I'm telling you, man, I think this kid can give somebody like Spence, Tank Davis, and those, you know, maybe even Canelo a run for their money on these pay-per-view matchups in terms of generating money. I'm telling you, the kid, like, you know, he's marketable. You know, he's marketable, and obviously he's been winning. De La Hoya, you know, I mean, I always remember that De La Hoya was doing an interview in San Diego or something. I think it might have been for a Canelo media workout, or it might have been in Carson. I think it was at a Golden Boy show in Carson, California at the StubHub. But they asked De La Hoya, like, oh, is Ryan ready for Tank? And De La Hoya was like, oh, no, Tank's a beast. That wasn't that long ago, you know? And Ryan says he wants that fight. They want to make that fight. And don't be surprised that if he wins this fight, especially if he knocks him out, if he knocks out Fortuna, he's going to say Tank's name. He's like, I want Tank. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. But I'm telling you, man, like, I know this kid gets a lot of slack, and, you know, in a lot of ways it's deservingly so. But if he can keep winning, and especially keep winning against the bigger names at 135 and even 140 when he officially moves up to that weight class and actually win those fights, the kid's going to be he's going to generate a ton of money. I mean, his last fight, I think in Texas, it was over $1 million gate. I think it was an over $1 million gate. So he is proving it. He is proving it financial wise. And, you know, somebody like Leonard Elby or Mayweather Promotions with Tank Davis, that's all they talk about. That's all I talk about. Like, oh, you know, Tank's selling out arenas all over the country and money. And they're right. Tank's a star. He's a bigger star than Ryan is right now, especially if you look at money to money and generating ticket sales. and people coming to come watch. But if Ryan can get to that level, that's dangerous. That is dangerous. What do you think?
I agree. I think, he just needs to stop calling people out. He said he wasn't going to do it, keeps calling people out, and then never fights them. So, a lot of the fans are kind of just getting, sick and tired of hearing that.
No, right.
But yeah, beat Fortuna. That's, you're back in the ring. If you're going to call out those bigger names, then go and fight them.
Yeah, that's true. We will see. Maybe, honestly, I see Golden Boy putting him against Jojo Diaz by the end of the year, maybe. Who knows? Like, oh, okay, well, you're going to fight the guy that beat this guy now or something like that. You never know. Also in the card in the co-main event, Alexis Rocha, friend of the show, 19-1, goes up against Samuel Cote, or is it Cote, 23-3. I'm not really too familiar with Samuel Cote. Are you familiar with him?
No, not really. He's got a lot of wins back in his his home country. I think it's probably a stay busy fight. Keep Alexis Rocha's name in the mix. Keep him on the same kind of path as like Mickinson and Virgil Ortiz, who are fighting.
He's staying active though, which is great.
Yeah, which is good to see. So I think home victory for Alexis. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and he's still a young kid too. I think he's 24, maybe. He's they're keeping him active though, which is great. We can complain all the time about opponent selection, like, oh, he's not fighting anybody, but as long as they keep him active multiple times a year, hey man, at least we have that. That's something. That is something. Also in the card, Lamont Roach Jr., 22-1-1, goes up against Angel Rodriguez. This is for the WBA Super Featherweight title eliminator. Not the title, but it's an eliminator for that title. And also on the card, Ricardo Sandoval, 20-1, goes up against David Jimenez. This is an eliminator for the WBA Flyweight World title. And we will both be at this event, covering this event for the Last Round podcast on Saturday in downtown LA. So if you see us, say hi. Mike might have some free shirts for you if he brings them. We will see. So we'll try to get some content for you guys, and cover that event as best as we could. Hopefully we can get some bonus interviews to publish for you guys sometime next week as well. News and notes. Dimitri Bivol and Gilberto Ramirez has been officially ordered by the WBA. The bout was formally ordered by the WBA on this past Monday afternoon, with the two sides given until August 10th. So about a little less than a month or so to come to terms to avoid a purse bid hearing. Hey, man, I don't see why this fight doesn't happen. I mean, right? I mean, what do you think?
Good fight, if they can get it kind of sewn up and done so they keep on the same schedule as Canelo.
I think that's what they want to do. I think. Yeah, I think that's what they want to do. I mean, how likely is that Golden Boy and DAZN and Matchroom have this fight just before Canelo Triple G?
Why not? If you can. September 17th, right? So,
yeah, maybe like a week or two before.
A week or two before, a week or two after. So it's still on the same schedule. Then Canelo goes in and fights the winner. I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly think before that fight is a little bit better, because think about it like this: especially for Golden Boy, if Ramirez beats Bivol and takes his title, and Canelo and Triple G fight, and Canelo beats Triple G, instead of asking him about Bivol, they're going to ask him about Ramirez. Like, well, Ramirez just beat the guy who beat you. And Ramirez is with Golden Boy, and Golden Boy would love that. Like, yeah, we're back in the Canelo sweepstakes, I honestly think the best strategy is to have that fight scheduled before the Canelo Triple G. Because if you have it after, you'll get some press about it. But if you can have Canelo or even Triple G in ring or in the subsequent interviews after about that fight, if Ramirez wins especially, or even Bivol wins, whatever, it's a lot more press coverage, right?
No, in a perfect world, it's just kind of quickly put together. But yeah, in the perfect world, we'd love to see that beforehand, and then you can get the questions of who he's actually fighting. Right.
Also, Adrian Broner, he's back. He returns. He comes back when you least expect it. will meet Omar Figueroa in a junior welterweight bout on August 20th. This is 140 pounds. Maybe a catch weight. It might be like 143 or something, 144. In Hollywood, Florida, not California, in Florida. This was officially announced by the PBC this past Monday. So Broner still coming back, man. He's still there. And also Jesse Bam Rodriguez breakout 2022 campaign continues with the 115-pound title defense versus Israel Gonzalez as the chief support to the Canelo Alvarez Triple G trilogy bout in September in Las Vegas. Metro Boxing announced that also this earlier this week. So like we talked about, consistent activity. Bam Rodriguez is also showing it, and now being chief support to Canelo in front of, 18,000 plus at T-Mobile Arena. Not too bad. The kid at 22 years old, he's made a lot of strides in like the last 9 to 10 months. Good for him. He deserves it so far. And then Jake Paul, it's funny to think about Jake Paul, and after so many years since he started that DAZN or that social media fight, and now we're talking about him like, consistently in this sport of boxing. It's crazy. But they had a press conference this week. He was supposed to fight Tommy Fury, but Tommy Fury couldn't get into the country. They wouldn't let him on the flight. Reportedly, it's because of the association between the Furies and Daniel Kinahan. I'm sure a friend of the show, Al Dawson of The Insider, can tell us more about that, especially when we have him on, hopefully soon, and kind of give us an update on that whole situation. But Jake Paul will now be fighting Hasim Rahman Jr., the son of the former heavyweight champion of the world, Hasim Rahman, on August 6th in New York. I believe it's August 6th, definitely in New York City at Madison Square Garden. And this is Jake Paul's first legitimate fight against a fighter, a boxer with professional experience. Rahman has one loss, I believe. he's like 12-1 or something. His one loss did come as a stoppage in his last fight.
I was there.
Say it again.
I was there.
Oh, you were, huh? That's right. How would kind of give us an insight now that I forgot you were there. To give us an insight into that.
He's a heavyweight fighter.
Yeah, he's going back down to cruiserweight for this fight against Jake Paul.
He doesn't throw a lot. He was winning that fight until he got caught. He was winning the fight, pieced him up, absolutely battered McKenzie, the son of who was it? Tommy Morrison. Tommy Morrison's son was the guy who beat him. He was piecing him up, and then just kind of got lazy, and he caught him with an uppercut, and he just couldn't survive. He got back up, and then the referee jumped in and stopped it. And Rahman was pretty pissed about him stopping it. But yeah, he doesn't throw a lot. It's kind of accurate. He's kind of a smaller, stocky heavyweight. Be interesting to see, because that's a lot of weight to come down.
It is, and I'm sure Jake Paul thought about that. But I don't know if you've seen the highlights of their press conference. It was actually pretty entertaining. They were kind of going back and forth. And I know Rahman Jr. has sparred with Jake Paul in the past to help him prepare for his previous matchups, I guess, if you want to call them that, instead of fights. And I guess Jake Paul records all his sparring sessions, and Rahman called him out. He's like, oh, how come you don't release all the footage, instead of releasing certain parts and all that. If you get a chance to watch the press conference, it was actually pretty entertaining. They were going at it. And it really seemed like Rahman Jr. wasn't coming in to be an opponent. Like, he was really like, I'm coming to get you. And, he's a big guy, we're just going to have to look at it and evaluate the notion of him dropping from heavyweight to cruiserweight. That's a lot of weight, and how that's going to affect him. But, I wouldn't bet. I wouldn't bet against Rahman Jr. here, because he is a legitimate fighter. He's a big guy. If you look at him, he's a big guy with professional experience, only one loss. He sparred with Jake Paul, so he's kind of seen already what he kind of looks at. So that's an advantage too. I mean, the fact that we're kind of like still kind of giving some type of chance to Jake Paul at this point in his career is ridiculous. But that just shows that regardless of what people think about him, he's kind of gained a lot of fans in terms of hardcore boxing fans. I think there's a lot of people who have recognized, like, you know what, he's kind of, I don't want to say the real deal, but he's kind of getting there, and he's kind of proving it a little bit by little bit. I mean, I think even Jake Paul said today, tell me if you agree with this or not, but he said that Hasim Rahman Jr. is a better fighter, and this is a better matchup, and it's a more difficult matchup than Tommy Fury is.
Yeah, I believe that Rahman's had around 100 amateur fights, and then he's 12-1 as a pro.
That's a lot.
And I think he's more professional than Tommy. You know, Tommy obviously just like parties and kind of uses his brother's fame and his fame from reality TV and kind of lives on that.
I think you have to give Jake Paul credit, man. You do.
No, you have to. Yeah, going into the fight now, I would pick Hasim. I would pick Rahman, but I want to see him fight week because that's going to be crazy to come down like probably 35 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. But yeah, that's definitely an intriguing fight. That's going to be on Showtime pay-per-view. So Showtime, Steven Espinoza in the Jake Paul sweepstakes. And also on that card that we haven't touched on, but Amanda Serrano returns after her Katie Taylor defeat. She'll be defending. I think she's going back down to her natural weight and defending her titles on that card as well. But once again, guys, we appreciate you guys listening to this week's episode. As you always do of the Last Round podcast, please make sure to check out our links. They are on our Twitter account, our Instagram account, all over the place. We have merchandise available with the Fit Warrior brand, shirts and sweatshirts. Check us out and support us. That money obviously goes up to our expenses to produce the podcast and go to these events and get this bonus content for you and all that stuff. So it definitely helps our bottom lines. But before we sign off, once again, Mike, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
At the Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. Be sure to join us next week. I think the preview is Joet Gonzalez against Isaac Dombe.
Oh, that's already next week. I didn't think that completely went under my radar. You know, that's going to be a good fight. I'm looking forward to that fight. So for my co-host, Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is the Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.